Okay, good morning, everyone. I'd like to call to order the open meeting for Thursday, August 11th, 2022, and ask the Commission Secretary for information on today's agenda.
Each commissioner has independently reviewed the minutes of the open meeting of Thursday, August 4th, 2022, and each has informed me there is no need to discuss the minutes.
Move we approve the minutes of Thursday, August 4th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Each commissioner has independently reviewed the agenda, and each has informed me there is no need to discuss the notices associated with agenda items 2 through 12. The suggested minute associated with agenda item 15, denying the request of Dr. Kinlow for a formal review of her complaint and directing staff to work with Milwaukee Waterworks to back bill WGLB Scholarship and JAK Foundation going back 2 years from the date of issuance of the back bill, and further directing staff to work with Milwaukee Waterworks to issue a refund to JPH Properties, Inc. of its full payments dating back to May 2017. Or agenda item 18, accepting the uncontested alternatives identified in the final decision matrix and directing a January through December 2023 surcharge timeline.
Correct. Hang on one second.
Lower light.
Oh.
January through
Oh,
December.
sorry, Jamie.
Yep.
Okay. Move we approve the notices of investigation associated with agenda items 2 through 9.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. I move that we approve the notices of proceeding associated with agenda items 10 through 12.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. For agenda item 15, docket 3720, CC 235656, I move that we deny the request for a formal review by Ms. Kinlow and also direct staff to work with Milwaukee Waterworks regarding a refund and a back bill as described by the Commission Secretary and in the Commission memo.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. In docket 6690, FR 2021, I move that we, 6680, FR, the wrong one, 21. Move that we accept the uncontested items and authorize a surcharge over the period of January 2023 through December 2023 as described.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that brings us to agenda item 13, which is docket 1-IC-541. This is a request for intervenor compensation from Walnut Way Conservation Corp. To participate in the rate cases of Wisconsin Electric Power Company and Wisconsin Gas. This is a new intervenor that we've seen, and this particular intervenor represents the majority of the residents in the Lindsay Heights neighborhood in Milwaukee, which all of those residents are customers of the utility that is in for the rate case. The applicant asserts that in particular this low-income community could shoulder a disproportionately large share of the proposed rate increases, and this intervenor has identified several alternative proposals. They're seeking to hire Pines Bach LLP as legal counsel, as the applicant itself does not have an attorney on staff. They are requesting intervenor comp in the amount of $69,828. They submitted their work plan, which includes work to be done by 2 attorneys. And as Commission staff indicated in their memo to us, this particular intervenor meets the requirements under Wisconsin Administrative Code PSC 3.02 to be eligible to receive intervenor comp. Our intervenor comp fund has enough money, more than enough money, to fully fund this IC request as well as the next IC request that we're going to be discussing. And so I did not have any concerns. I actually am looking forward to reading what they put on the record. I think we've talked about, a lot about, actually, low-income customers and the potential impact on low-income communities as a result of generation facilities that we have approved. I know that that's come up in discussion in those generation dockets, and so I myself am looking forward to seeing what they present in terms of information and evidence on the record. So I was at alternative 1. I would fully fund their IC request. Commissioner Noy?
Thanks. I think this request fails on several grounds. First of all, one of the things an intervener has to show is hardship if they can't participate or if without the money. That was not met here. They simply said they would be economic hardship for the entity if we didn't grant the intervener compensation. But if you take a look at the financials that they're required to submit, they have several $1 million in assets. Just over 200,000 of their assets are restricted. And while they said that this would require them to divert resources from other programs, that's not an economic hardship. That's reality of what every family across the state have to do every day is make choices. So I think that they have failed on that grounds. I also thought their application was a bit all over the board in what they want to do here. First of all, we have never set rates based on one's income or zip code. And I think that if we are going to start to go down that road, you know, that's the reason we have so many programs for those who have that hardship in paying their electric bills. But we cannot start to set rates based on where one's zip code is. It's also, they also talk here about how they want to spread the benefits of certain generation and energy efficiency programs and want to bring proposals for that into this rate case. And we don't put in rate cases where the energy efficiency programs go. We don't also talk about infrastructure investment and where that goes in rate cases and what must be built. They also talk about wanting to bring the benefits of renewable energy to the community they serve. Again, I'm not sure how that fits in the context of a rate case. The utilities do a lot of careful planning on where their infrastructure goes. It's not, again, based on, it's based on what brings the most value and what maximizes the renewable energy. So I think this, the subjects that they want to address are not necessary for us to decide this rate case. And if we do want to start looking at income, we have, in the last couple of years, I understand, surveyed all of the utilities and asked them for information about income, and that's something our staff can also analyze if we want to have a discussion about that. So, but again, going back to my first point, they haven't shown economic hardship. And one would be hard-pressed to say that an entity with several $1 million in assets can't afford $70,000 in attorney fees. So I'm at a no.
Commissioner Hebner?
I'm at alternative 1. I would fund this request. We have not heard from an organization like this in my time watching and being part of the commission. So I think that hearing their specific perspectives is going to be valuable. And so I would fund this request. I think hearing what they have to say, both about rates and about programs, I think would be instructive to the commission and to the applicant and other interveners. So as far as the dollars, I mean, this is an organization that does not participate at the commission. It is expensive to participate at the commission. If we want to go down the road of disallowing attorneys' costs, you know, all of our utilities have ample dollars in the bank too. So if we want to do rate cases where attorney's costs aren't covered, you know, I don't think we want to go down that road, so.
Yeah, but that's not a requirement of PSC 3, so it's different. It's a different standard for interveners than for utilities.
And I think the Intervenor Comp Fund is here specifically to support those types of organizations that, you know, might be bringing perspectives we haven't seen. So I think this is appropriate, and I'm at alt 1.
Yep, agreed, okay.
Okay,
You want to
so-
make the motion?
Yep. So in docket 1 IC 541, I move that we approve the request of Walnut Way Conservation Corp. for $69,828 in intervenor compensation for participation in 5 UR 110.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, those opposed?
No?
Okay, that moves us to agenda item 14, which is another intervenor comp request. This is docket 1-IC-542. This is an application for intervenor comp filed by Clean Wisconsin to participate in that same docket, 5-UR-110. Clean is seeking $71,755. And what this is related to is they'd like to retain a consultant and also use a staff attorney to look at rate making. In particular, they mention performance-based rate making for energy efficiency. And similar to the reasoning from the last agenda item, I think it's dangerous if we exclude evidence before it's been presented to us, or if we presume that we know what's going to be presented to us. I think that's the purpose of the Intervenor Compensation Fund, is to allow for participation from parties that wouldn't normally participate. And in this instance, I, again, would be at alternative 1, where I would fully fund their request in the amount of $71,755. Commissioner Nowak.
Thanks. This request is also wholly misplaced. They don't even want to address something that's in the rate case. We normally give intervenor comp for matters that are in the pending case before us. They want to address energy efficiency program and a PBR that is not in the, they admit is not in the case. So this is us now, if it's approved, funding a generic docket for intervenor compensation. And we already have a generic docket on PBR. So we just can't start, they can't hang their wish list of things. We can't have any entity just come in and say, well, I want to start to study this. Let's attach it to this proceeding because it's kind of related. That's not what the Intervenor Comp Fund is for. If they were responding to something in a proceeding, that would make sense here. But this is not an appropriate use of the fund, so I'm at no.
Commissioner Huebner?
Okay, I am again at alternative 1. I would fund this request. I think the, you know, the rate case, there's other dockets where some of these issues come up, but the rate case is an appropriate docket where, you know, the costs of a performance rate making would be, you know, subject to our review and approval. And so that is, to me, what they're proposing is that there would be a cost to incentivize energy efficiency for that utility, but, you know, it's going to be their burden to show us what the benefit would be and how that would overall, you know, be in the benefit of ratepayers. But that is completely legitimate to have on the record in my perspective. So I'm at alt 1.
But I think it would be in their voluntary program. It wouldn't even be in the rate case.
But that's, again, I think it's dangerous to assume that you know exactly what evidence is going to be placed on the record. And if they were to propose something in the generic proceeding, all of our first reaction would be, well, it's not appropriate to do it in the generic proceeding. You have to intervene in their rate case, because that's where these types of decisions get made. And so I do think it's appropriate. And perhaps they propose an idea or a pilot program. There will be testimony on it. The company will have the ability to respond via their own expert witnesses, and then we can read what that testimony looks like. And so I do think it's appropriate, and I think that it's exactly the right docket to present that type of evidence.
Yeah, I'm not making any presumptions. I'm going off what they have to put in their applications here to at least give us an idea of what they're asking for ratepayer dollars for. And even staff mentions that it has to be in the utility-specific energy program. So, but that's fine.
Okay, so in docket 1 IC 542, I move that the commission approve the request of Clean Wisconsin for $71,755 in intervenor compensation for participation in docket 5 UR 110.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
No?
Okay, that moves us to agenda item 16, which is docket 3270-FR-2021. So the final dockets we're going to take up are related to 2021 fuel costs. So these are the reconciliation of fuel costs that were incurred by the utilities in the year 2021. And PSC 116 is the fuel rules. It's very prescriptive, very specific about the formula that has to be employed, the timing, and what is within our discretion. So I won't repeat this for every case, but these are the fuel reconciliations, and each utility this year has under-collected what they thought their fuel costs were going to be. In other words, they're in a position where customers will be charged a surcharge. And it's important to note that fuel costs are simply pass-through costs. This isn't where the company makes a return. It's the staff, they turn in their fuel records, staff goes through a very comprehensive audit, ensures that the fuel costs were prudently incurred, that there was no mismanagement or imprudent decisions. The audit gets completed, the calculation gets made, and then sometimes, we have leeway in terms of timing of when that surcharge should be implemented, and other accounting issues. So, my understanding is that there's no need for us to discuss any of the uncontested alternatives in any of these fuel cases. And so I will jump into MG&Es. So MG&E has reported an undercollection, and that undercollection results in a balance of about $3.3 million. So the first issue in front of us is issue 1, and that is, should we accept commission staff's level pursuant to the audit? And I agree with their findings, so I'm at alternative 1.
Yeah, I agree.
Yep, I'm at alternative 1, and just a generic kind of comment about this, and the one that we already approved in our checkoffs is, and this is in these records, but you started to see these fuel prices rise at the end of the year. And so one of the questions Judge Newmark asked was there any way to do a mid-year correction? And the answer really was, this was stuff that happened really October, November, December. Some of it related to plants, but what you really saw was in the MISO market, the locational marginal prices started to rise, and that's really driven by natural gas. And a lot of that is driven by global, national and global issues. So things that are outside of the direct control of utilities. And if 2021 is fun, 2022 is going to be a real bonanza as we look at that with the geopolitical issues that have happened in 2022. So I'm at alternative 1.
Okay. Issue 1A is something that we don't normally see. So as a result of its audit, staff found that both MG&E and Pub Service received liquidated damages for the delay in service for Badger Hollow 1 generating facility. And the way they accounted for those liquidated damages was to essentially use them as an offset to their costs. That is something that we have not allowed in prior cases. What we've said is when you receive those liquidated damages, defer them and use them at a future rate proceeding. Now, in this particular case for MG&E, removing those liquidated damages and having them reverse the accounting that they did in this case is of no benefit to the customer. The customer remains the same. And for me, when I look at both cases, I'm results oriented, and I'm making sure that the dollars are going to the benefit of the customers, because that's what's contemplated by the fuel rules. So because the customers are not harmed by this treatment of liquidated damages, I'm okay with it. I'm willing to accept the applicant's use of those liquidated damages to reduce their monitored fuel costs. I'm willing to accept that as reasonable in this case. So for this case, I'm at alternative 1. Commissioner Nowak?
Yeah, I think that the use here, and we'll discuss it, how it's used in the pub service case in a few minutes. I see merit in it because these are the ratepayer dollars, so it should be a dollar for dollar trade-off. And here that is the end result, that the customers receive the full benefit of the liquidated damages. So, and it makes sense that they would be an offset to what would have been, they wouldn't have needed them had the facility been operating on its scheduled time. So I agree with alternative 1.
Okay. Commissioner Hebner?
I'll join you at alternative 1. I mean, we'll talk about with pub service, and I was coming in trying to keep those consistent with how we processed it, understanding that, we really ideally don't want these liquidated damages to be in the fuel side, because it can affect the percentage over and under. So, however, in this case, there is no impact to customers to doing that, as you said, and there is complexity to trying to pull this out and somehow net it back. So I will join you at alt 1.
Okay. Issue 2, should the commission specify an accounting treatment for any future liquidated damages? So this is a follow-on to the discussion that we're having. So including those damages in monitored fuel, as you said, Commissioner Hebner, then makes that benefit subject to the fuel rules. Mm-hmm. And it impacts the calculation of whether they're in a refund or a surcharge position. And so I think because the purpose is to ensure that they go back to customers, as you said, Commissioner Nowak, dollar for dollar, I am at alternative 1, which is that in the future, liquidated damages received by MG&E should not be included in monitored fuel and should be reported separately and deferred to a future proceeding where it can be determined how best to get those dollars back to customers.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it should be deferred and recorded separately for transparency purposes. And then once, the dollars, it's clear where they're at, and then there's options on the table. It doesn't prohibit us doing what we just did with the previous question. Again, I think it's going to depend on where is the ratepayer being most fairly treated here with their dollars. So I'm at alternative 1 just to keep it transparent. And I know it's maybe a little extra accounting step, but it's worth it.
Yep, agreed. Commissioner Hebner?
Okay, I'll join you both at alt 1.
Okay. Okay, now, what's the appropriate method for the recovery of the dollars? So the company has requested that they be allowed to defer this balance and apply it in their limited electric reopener case that's pending. And there is language from that order that allows them to file that limited reopener. And it seems to me, looking back at those order points from 3270 UR 124, that this is a reasonable method to treat these costs. So this one, I went back and forth and I did a lot of reading and rereading and looking at the fuel rules, and I'm comfortable that this is reasonable, that it's appropriate. So I'm at alternative 1.
Yeah, we've treated this differently over the years, at least I have, and I think it depends on the circumstances of each case, the amount of the dollars, when they wish to return them, is it a multi-year rate case, is it, different things. So here, given that they will be in, it does fit in. I think it makes sense to spread this out and include it in their next rate case. So I'm alternative 1.
Okay. Commissioner Hebner?
Yeah, I'm at alternative 1 on this as well.
Okay. All right, so that brings us to 3A. So because they're going to take care of it in that limited reopener, that puts me at alternative 6.
Yeah.
Commissioner Hebner?
Yep, I'm at alt 6.
And then that makes issue 3B moot, I believe, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, perhaps, it depends how they want to put it how they want to offset it
Yeah.
in the rate case, but perhaps we may need to specify something in the event it's $1. I don't know that it hurts to specify something.
What we would
yeah,
prefer.
if it's used as that way, yeah, and Cindy's nodding her head, so,
Okay, all right.
yeah.
In that case, I mean, so long as everybody's comfortable with it, I like the class level allocation.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah.
Formerly known as the
The
HIPSH.
method?
Yes,
Yes.
yes,
So I'm at alt 1
yeah.
for that.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll join you both there too.
Okay,
I'm fine with you.
all right.
Hold on. Tanner is shaking his head.
Uh-oh.
These are supposed to be easy.
Yeah. Right.
We're fine.
Okay. All right.
Then in docket 3270 FR 2021, I move that we approve the application pursuant to our discussion today.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that brings us to agenda item 17, which is NSP's fuel reconciliation, 4220-FR-2021. The only, oh no, this is a different one. All right, issues 1 and 2 are uncontested. And so the company has under-collected approximately $29.3 million. So issues 1 and 2 are uncontested as it relates to the audit findings and the calculation of that number. Then issue 2A is, should the applicant be able to apply that remaining refund obligation? They had a little bit of a carryover. They had over-collected their 2019 fuel costs, and so they proposed that they be able to net that against the debit balance. And so I think that makes all sorts of sense, so I'm at alternative 1.
Yeah, I agree.
Yep, alternative 1.
Okay. And then issue 2B, again, is what's the appropriate time period? So the applicant supports spreading out the surcharge over a longer period of time in order to minimize the impact on their customers. And initially I thought, well, if we're dealing with 2021 fuel costs, let's take care of this by the end of 2022. But I think, again, being interested in the result of trying to minimize the impact on customers, I was comfortable with their proposal to apply that surcharge from September 2022 through August of 2023. So that was alternative 5.
Yeah, this is a substantial amount, 30, just shy of $30 million. And I think in this instance, I usually, I think we need to minimize the rate shock of the other costs that are going to be coming in a variety of different, not just in energy, but other things. So I'm also at alternative 5.
Okay, Commissioner Huebner.
Yeah, I'm at alternative 5 too, and I should make sure for the record, my flippant comment earlier that this is definitely not fun. This is about $30 million for customers, and we understand that impact. I think that the 12-month, as we did with Alliant and MG&E just before, to me that makes sense for a lot of reasons, obviously the rate impact, but also just because of the per kilowatt hour rate that would be required for 1 month or 4 months. And if a certain customer happens to have a really high usage in that month, they may end up paying a lot more than they otherwise would. So I think it makes sense to spread this out. So I'm at alt 5.
Okay. And then finally, issue 2C. Again, I would go with the HIPSH method. That is, use a class level allocation for the surcharge, which is alt 1.
I agree.
I'm at alt 1 as well. Thank
Okay.
you.
And docket 4220 FR 2021, I move that we approve the application as discussed today.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Did we do 18 already? Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, finally, agenda item 19, which is docket 6690-FR-2021. So this is the pub service reconciliation, and really the only contested issue. So while the company under-collected for fuel, they have excess revenues as defined in the code. Therefore, they're not eligible to receive a surcharge for that under-collection. So the only decision in front of us is related to that same contract for Badger Hollow and the liquidated damages. So in this particular case, we have the same choice in front of us, and in the interest of explaining why I'm not going to be consistent with what I did in MG&E, and there was some back and forth about the amount. So first they came back and they said, well, it's $4.1 million. So if you order us to remove that, customers are actually going to be worse off because we'll then be creating a liability in the amount of, I think it was $3.6 million. And so as a result, we issued a data request that said, can you please help us, provide the calculation for that $4.1 million? And then the company corrected itself and said, well, it's actually not. It's actually half of that, $2.1 million that would be due to customers. And that had to do with whether or not they were in 100% earnings sharing tranche or the lesser. And so in this particular case, I will approve their application and not authorize a refund or a surcharge. And so that's alternative 1, just related to their general, the results of the audit. But then as it relates to the liquidated damages, I am going to require that they remove those liquidated damages and defer them for return to ratepayers in their next rate proceeding. And I would also order that carrying costs accrue at the long-term debt rate. And then similar to what we did in MG&E, I would require the company to defer any future liquidated damages, as you said, Commissioner Nowak, in the interest of transparency. for return to customers at a future time. So as it relates to liquidated damages, I'm at alternative 1, and I would use the long-term debt rate and subalt A. Commissioner Noack?
Yeah, on the first question, alternative 1, accepting the audit. On the second one, I'm in the same place mostly as you. I see it as being consistent about ensuring that the liquidated damages are realized on a dollar-for-dollar basis by the customer. That, as you mentioned, it's all going to depend on their earnings and where they are in the collection on the fuel rules and, how those dollars can be offset. So here, I would also require them to remove them from the purchase power and defer them because here, if we did what we did in MG&E, that full benefit wouldn't quite be realized. So, but I would go short-term debt. It's my understanding they only have a 1 year, they're only in right now for a 1 year rate case. And I also would be at subalternative A, requiring them to defer future ones. Again, same reason, transparency. If it in the future works out, if there are future liquidated damages and it works out where they aren't in this over-earning and other situation, that would be an option to apply it as they initially did. But I would stick with short-term debt. Other than that, I'm in the same spot as you.
Okay. Commissioner Huebner?
Do either of you, I was hoping we could get this, I know they're in for a case now, and Cindy's shaking her head, but Martin told me we could try. No interest in that.
I thought about that too, though.
All right.
We're done with the audit and revenue requirements, that adjustments have been done. The old
I'm at-
monkey rule.
Okay, I'm at alternative 1 for accepting the application, as you both are, and I am at the same spots as both of you, alternative 1 and subalternative A. If we cannot get it into this rate case, then I think the long-term debt makes sense, as we did with Alliant last time. So I would join you there, Chair.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, I'll stay it short. 6690 FR 2021, I move that we approve the application as discussed today.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that concludes our official business for today. The next open meeting is scheduled for Thursday, August 18th, 2022 at 10:30 a.m.
Move we stand adjourned until Thursday, August 18th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.